So to get started, in this release, we have 31 new features. We have 46 new fixes and 8 kind of miscellaneous features, typically kind of like smaller features that we've added in, maybe something that someone was waiting on or something like that. About the 31 new features, these are available as of now. Right now, I'm going to be running QuoteWerks version 5.3 build 4.11. So if you are on like 4.02 or 4.03, there may be a couple of features you don't see that are not available in yours. You just need to update to the very latest, which is on the website. So as we're running through those, if you have questions, just let me know. You'll see there is a questions box in the GoToWebinar session. So if you just have a question, post it there. I'm probably not going to answer your question immediately. So if you just be patient, at the end of the meeting, we'll actually go through those questions and try to answer as many as you can. If we're not able to get to yours, please feel free to let us know. Give us a call, send us an email. Be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So just a couple integration updates. For those of you that are using ConnectWise, you will want to be on the latest version of QuoteWerks because that supports 2018.4. Also, the Sugar CRM users, if you're on 8.0, if you've already been upgraded, you'll want to update to QuoteWerks to the latest as well. For those of you in Australia, we do have added support now for Reckon Accounts 2017 desktop rather, which is essentially like QuickBooks in the Australian scape. Goldmine 2018.2 and Maximizer 16.2 are also available. This release also includes support for Ingram Micro New Zealand as well. Additionally, for those Maximizer users, we have added on-premise support for Maximizer CRM Live. So before we had just the hosted version that was hosted by Maximizer. So now if you're hosting the data yourself for the on-premise, that is available in the latest release as well. So what's new? One of the biggest features of this release is going to be the new payment options. So for those of you that are using QuoteValet, this is going to be extremely useful. For those of you not using QuoteValet, it's something that can still be useful because you can essentially customize the payment options. So before, on the sale info tab of QuoteWerks, you only had the option to include 2 payment options, basically credit card or terms. So we've completely rewritten it. We've added a lot of new functionality, and we're going to spend quite a bit of time today on this, going over how this works. But basically, you'll have the option to set payment options for credit card, e-check or ACH, wire transfer, PayPal, and then you'll even have 2 custom payment options. You'll actually be able to include like a surcharge or a discount if the customer is paying by a specific option. And we can even set defaults and customize the text of the payment option. So if you call it something else in your organization or just in your industry, you'll be able to customize those options to your liking. And we'll walk through that today. We'll show you how to use them. We'll show you how to set those defaults, everything. For the QuoteValet users, this will be the most beneficial because your customer can actually select which payment option they want to use. For those of you that are not using QuoteValet, you can still use this because this does give you an easy way to display just quickly the payment options that are available on the PDF document. So it's a nice feature that can be used by every user. The QuoteValet users, you'll just have access to a little bit more dynamic of a document since you're going through QuoteValet. So that brings us to the next one, ACH port support in QuoteValet. So if any of you are using QuoteValet and you're using QuoteValet to accept payments via credit card or PayPal, you can now add ACH support. You will need to check with your gateway. There are some requirements depending on which gateway you're using, whether or not that you might have to set something else up. They might have to create a special account for you, but we'll show you how to kind of set that up inside of QuoteValet. But for most of you, you're probably going to need to contact your gateway just to make sure they do support ACH payments. If you already know they support ACH payments, then there might be some information that you'll need to get to them or get from them before you can set up the integration in QuoteValet. But it'll allow your customer to actually make payment through ACH on QuoteValet. We've also added in this release GreatAmerica credit application submittal. So what this means is if any of you are GreatAmerica users, where you're using GreatAmerica as your leasing provider, you can now actually submit a credit app directly from QuoteWerks. We'll walk through how to do that today, but you can kind of see in the screenshot, there'll be a new button there where you can actually click on submit credit application, and it'll look at the charge on the document and the information available with your account with them, and let you know if that is approved or not. It'll typically give you a range, say it's approved up to X amount of dollars. If the document changes, maybe the customer adds more to it, they're going to purchase more from you, it's really easy to wipe it out and you can resubmit it for approval. So if you have users or customers that change on a regular basis, kind of what they're needing, or you give a lot of options, you'll be able to resubmit through the document itself without having to contact GreatAmerica separately. So really, really useful functionality, and we'll walk through how to use this as well. Very similar if you are using Ingram Micro Lease IT. So if you are signed up with Ingram Micro to provide leasing options to your customers, this is also available as well, the Submit credit application. So we added it for GreatAmerica users and also Ingram Micro Lease IT users, where you'll actually be able to submit the credit application, see if it's approved, and then same thing, if the document changes and that's beyond the threshold that was originally approved, you can resubmit it for approval directly through QuoteWerks. So really nice functionality and something that's going to be really, really useful here. We've also improved our customer price history window. This may not be something that a lot of you are aware of, so we're going to walk through that one today. But basically, this is a really great place to check on product price history and also customer product price history, where you can see kind of what you've sold this particular item for to the customer in the past, what the margin was, what the cost modifier used was, all that information, which vendor you sourced it from. We can even copy those results to the clipboard so you can export them out to Excel. You can even use the find quoted item functionality to search for a specific item in a document, see a list of those documents, then even open those documents directly from this window. So we'll actually walk through this functionality as well. And then we have quite a few miscellaneous features. As in all releases, we typically have some kind of like smaller releases or some smaller features that we include that can be super helpful, and these are usually coming specifically from our users. So for instance, we have the ability to apply required items in Pay Special. So for those of you that are unaware, the Pay Special allows you to copy and paste data from Excel and pull that information directly into QuoteWerks. So for instance, if you had a vendor quote or a vendor send you a quote and you wanted to copy and paste that quote into QuoteWerks so that you can mark it up and use your templates and everything, you can then use the Pay Special to do that functionality. And in the Pay Special, you now have the option to apply any required items. So if you have those items in the database, they have required items, you can apply that functionality here. You can also specify a database for your required and optional items. So if from one vendor it has required items, but from another vendor it doesn't, so when you source it from vendor A or vendor B, you can choose which required items are going to be associated with it. So just kind of expanded the functionality of the required items, specifically in Pay Special and in just the base functionality. Sync received payments with QuickBooks. This is a big one. For those of you that are accepting payments through QuoteWerks and you're using QuickBooks as your merchant provider or your merchant gateway, some of you were getting duplicate payments sent to QuickBooks because it was going through QuoteWerks, and then we were exporting the payment over to QuickBooks as well. So when the payment comes through QuickBooks Merchant Services, QuickBooks automatically puts it into your QuickBooks installation. So now you can have basically, you can turn off this functionality where QuoteWerks won't export the payment from QuoteWerks to QuickBooks since it's already in there. So this will only be for those of you that are using QuickBooks Merchant Services as your payment gateway. That's the only time you'll need to use this feature, but it's quite a few of you. So we were able to add that as an option in the QuickBooks setup. Edit copy cell text feature. This is a nice feature because this will allow you to copy the text directly from any description field in QuoteWerks. And so you can make modifications to it, you can change it, or it's just an easy way to look something up. If you're looking for like the find quoted item, you want to search by the description of a specific item, you can do that. And then finally, one of the newer features is now when you clone layouts in the deliver window, we'll actually use the file name of the QuoteWerks layout file. So before it would be called like layout 1, 2, 3, 10, 15, whatever. Now it'll actually use the name of the layout file instead. So it makes it a lot easier to stay kind of connected with what documents or what layouts are which in your deliver window. As always, we have a ton of resources available on the website. We're also available by email and phone. So if you do have questions or need assistance, definitely don't be shy. Give us a call, send us an email. We'll be happy to help. We have a ton of videos on the website. We're always adding new ones for new features, existing functionality, updating other videos. So always check out the videos page. The help file is obviously the best place to go for up-to-date information. That'll have every new feature that's in QuoteWerks and any existing feature that's in QuoteWerks available. The live and recorded webinars, obviously, this is great as well because it gives you access to kind of see specific feature sets with like new releases, and a lot of times we'll do specific feature webinars as well. And then the forum is a great place to interact with other QuoteWerks users. Highly recommend going there. This is also a great place to submit feature requests. So if you do have features that you're looking to get added to QuoteWerks or you'd like to see added, go to the forum and you can post it in there. Other users can actually add on, post, comment, upvote different feature requests. So it's a really great way to get involved and interactive with the development process, because we do look at it. Our developers are constantly in there for like smaller features, things that we can add, and even bigger features. And we're always looking at feedback and things like that. So definitely get involved there. It's free to sign up for the forums. A lot of you, if you've ever submitted a ticket to the support team, you already have a login for it. So you can just use your email address, hit forgot password, and you'll get a new password to be able to log in. If you've never submitted a ticket, that's great, but you can sign up as well, so that won't be a problem either. And then if you are looking for more kind of like localized help, we do have partners around the world. So if you do have questions or looking for someone who's just in your time zone, definitely feel free to let us know, and we can let you know kind of who's available and who's out there as well. They're also listed on the website as well, so you can look through that list also. We'll be at a few upcoming events, most notably and a couple ASCII events here in the future, SMB Tech Fest, HTG at the end of the month here, and then also CompT as well. So if you're at one of these events and you see us, definitely stop by, say hello. We're there to help you, answer questions, anything like that. So just make sure to stop by. Also, if you're not following us on Facebook and Twitter, make sure you're doing that. We post a lot of information out there, as well as our new videos are always uploaded to YouTube. So that's a great option to always stay on top of what's available or what the new videos are. Just subscribe to our channel, and then obviously following us on LinkedIn as well. So, again, if you need to get in contact with our sales team, we can be reached at sales@quoteworks.com, or just call the main number, hit extension 2. That'll put you through to the sales team, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you might need. Okay, so we got that out of the way. So let's go ahead and get to the demonstration of features. So the first one I want to start with is going to be our payment options. So the payment options are available on the Sale Info tab of QuoteWerks. So on the Sale Info tab, see there's payment options, and I have a default one set right now for credit card. And credit card is going to be probably one of the most common ones, but there's going to be some functionality in here that's available that wasn't before. So before we had the ability to add credit card or terms. Now we can add quite a few different ones. So you can see these by clicking on Add, and you'll actually see a list of all the payment options that we have. So to set one up, in this case, we'll say credit card. We'll select credit card, and the payment display text is essentially the customer-facing text. This is what the customer is going to see. So if you want to customize this, you can do this. You know, if you want to call it instead of credit card, if you want to call it maybe Visa, MasterCard, Amex, Discover, we can do that. This is also where you can add a surcharge or even a discount to this particular field. So this is going to be vary by state whether it's legal or not. For instance, in Florida, it's not legal to add a % charge like a convenience fee for accepting credit cards, but in some states it is. So if you are one of those states, then you can add a % charge and put in the % charge that it is and whether it's taxable or non-taxable. And then QuoteWerks will actually calculate that as part of the payment option. And so it'll show you what the total is and then what the surcharge is and what the grand total is. If you want to do a fixed amount, we can do that as well. So if you just wanted to say, you know, it's $25 for using a credit card or whatever it's going to be, or $3 or $5, whatever it's going to be, you can do that. So I'm just going to go ahead and click % charge here as an example. And then we'll just do 2.5%. non-taxable. And then this feature is really nice where this disable payment option feature will say if your quote or your document is over a certain dollar amount, you can actually disable the payment. So for instance, if you're in one of the states where you can't charge a convenience fee or anything like that, what you can do is actually disable the credit card. You know, if it's going to be a $20,000 charge, you probably don't want them to pay with credit card because that will be significant fees from the credit card company for using it. So what you can do is actually have this payment option no longer be available. So if I hit OK, since my document is over $28,000 or $20,000 rather, this is actually grayed out, and you can see here it's not available for use. So if I edit it, and we'll just change this to say, okay, it's available up to $30,000. Now it's available, and then this is going to be the display text that I was talking about, where this is what the customer will see. It'll say it's if they want to pay by Visa, MasterCard, Amex, Discover. And then you'll also see the surcharge amount. So it's going to be the total of the document plus $700 and almost $11 in surcharge. This text is also customizable. We'll get into where you can do that as well. In addition to adding the surcharge, you can also add a discount. So for instance, if you're in a state where you can't provide a surcharge, or if you are, but maybe you want to give the customer a small discount for paying by check because you are going to save those credit card fees, you can select your payment type. So in this case, we could say check, and if we wanted to call it, company check, we can say, okay, you know what, we'll take a 2% discount if you pay by check, and hit OK. And then that'll actually remove or deduct $568.79 from this particular document for paying by check. And when the customer selects that option, that's the option they'll see. Now, for those of you that are not using Quote Valet, the payment options will obviously be static. So it'll just be something that can be shown on the PDF where the customer can see their various options, but they can see the differences in the prices if they pay by credit card or if they pay by check. So those options will be available. If we click add, we have a couple other options. We can pay by ACH. So again, if the customer, if they pay by ACH, maybe there's no surcharge, we could just leave the calculation as none. It'll just be the total for the document, which is going to be the $28,439. And that would be if they're paying by ACH/eChecks. We then also have the option for PayPal, wire transfer, and what we call two custom payment types. So the custom payment types would be maybe the customer has like terms or like net 60. So you could put in here net 60. Maybe you also offer net 90, so you're going to offer them those options as well. So it's up to you what you want to use the payment types for. But that's why the custom ones are there. They're basically for your customization. You can use them however you'd like. All right, so we'll go ahead and we'll add that there on there. So right now we have 4 payment options. So if you need to remove a payment option, you can right click on them. You can move them up. So if you want to reorder them, so maybe you want want to encourage the customer to pay by e-check or company check, and then if they have to, they can purchase by credit card. You can also choose which one is selected or pre-selected for the customer by double clicking on it, or just right click and choose select payment option. If you want to remove the payment option, simply click on the payment option, choose remove payment option, or highlight it and click delete on your keyboard, and that'll remove it. Now, a big part of the payment options is being able to save it as default. So let's go ahead and just talk about that real quick. So if we go to our Tools Options menu and click on the Payment tab, this is where you can actually see the default payment options and where they're set. Now, some of you, if you have used payment options in the past, you may see terms still in there. That is available until you basically remove it. The reason is because we've replaced it with the other available payment options. If you want to still use terms, just remove it and add in one of the custom payment options. But this is where you can set default payment options, and the default payment option set here will automatically appear on the Sale Info tab of your document. So if you only accept credit cards or ACH and you want to have those 2 options by default, you can do that. If you want to set default options for the other ones, you can do that as well. This is where you can set the defaults. If you have kind of a combination of them, you could create templates in QuoteWerks that have those specific payment options set for you. So those are going to be the options and how you can set them up. You'll also see here, if we edit this credit card default option, this is going to be the default display text, the calculation, so if I was adding the surcharge or not. And then if this payment option will be disabled based on the dollar amount if the document gets too large. And then you can set these selections as the default, which basically means anytime you select credit card as a payment option, whether it was, maybe I'm not going to set it as a default, but if one of the users goes in, those options will already be set for them, so they're not having to customize it each time. So you can actually specify exactly the information you want set for the sales rep, so they're not having to add it manually each time. And you can do that for each payment option that we have. So if we wanted to do it for check, we could set check as a default as well. We also have the ability to change the display. So if you don't like the terminology or text that we're using, you can customize it here. The full macro available is, if you reset the link here, I had already customized mine just to shorten it, so it's a little easier to read. But if you want to view the full available options, just reset the macro there and you can see what's in there. I'm just going to go ahead and change it back to the way I had it. Same thing with the purchase option, which is the calculation display. So like when we say, oh, this is a surcharge or this is a discount, we've included that as well, so you can customize that. So if you want to change the wording of that and customize what that payment option, how it's going to appear on your PDF layouts and also on Quote Valet, this is where you can make those adjustments. Okay, so let's go ahead and hit OK here, and we're going to close out of here. So now that we have our payment options on the document, let's go ahead and upload this to Quote Valet so we can see what it's going to look like. So we're going to choose Upload to Quote Valet. And save our changes. And we'll upload it here. And then we'll preview this. We'll just make this a little smaller so it's a little easier to see. Okay, so we have our line item information. We have our document totals here. And then we have our payment options. So you can see our payment options is $28,000 plus $300 monthly. And that's going to be the full payment amount. Company check, Visa, MasterCard. That includes the surcharge amount and if they're net 60. So it makes it really easy for the customer to choose kind of which payment option they want. Like I said, if you're using just QuoteWerks without Quote Valet in the PDF, it'll just show the payment options that are available, and obviously the customer can sign off on it and tell you which one they're going to use or just send you a check. So that's easy enough. If you need to adjust or change the payment options, you can do that by clicking on the Sale Info tab and simply clicking on Edit. So for instance, maybe our credit card percent charge, we want to go ahead and just change this to 3% and then hit OK. That'll actually update our payment amount, and then we just need to re-upload this to Quote Valet, and that'll update the payment option. And so now our payment option has been updated with the new amount if we're using credit card. Okay, so for our document, we said if the document exceeds $30,000, it's going to disable payment option. It's going to disable this credit card payment option. So if we look here, it says if it's over $30,000, this credit card payment option will be disabled. So I'll show you how that works. If the document if the customer had the ability to change quantities, or maybe they added some optional items that push the document over that threshold, what QuoteWerks will do, and we'll just do it manually here. I'll just change this to 10. QuoteWerks will automatically see that, and then you'll see that this payment option is no longer available. And when the customer goes to view the quote the next time, it'll automatically have that information pushed up there. So we'll just re-upload it so it's a little easier to see. But this will actually push and change dynamically in Quote Valet. So when the customer goes up here, you'll actually see they can't, I'm trying to click on it, it's grayed out, they can't actually do it. Because this amount is over $30,000, this payment type is not available. So it'll automatically remove it from being able to be selected. Now, that's not saying that you couldn't select credit cards later. I'm going to get into if the customer is like putting a deposit down and if they need to make partial payment one way or another way. We'll get into that in just a second here. So I'm going to go ahead and edit this option and just say, you know, as long as it's, say, if it's under $100,000, we'll go ahead and we'll sign off on it and they can pay that way. So that's available. Okay, so if the customer selects a payment option, obviously a few things can happen. So for instance, what if they select e-check, but they really meant to do company check? The really nice thing about the payment options is the customer will actually be able to change the payment option even if they selected the wrong one initially. So what I mean by that is, let's go ahead and agree to the terms and conditions. Please place my order ASAP. And we'll go ahead and we'll accept this document. So a couple things about the payment options. In order to actually receive a payment, you do have to have a deposit set. That's what kind of triggers the payment options integration. It's going to make sure that you're able to actually pull that information in. So we'll go ahead and we'll click on the Pay Now tab. So on the payment page, you'll see you still actually have the options to select the other payment options. So for instance, I already had e-check set. I don't have ACH set up in my QuoteWerks integration, so that's why it's not available. But if I did, I just wanted to show the screen that this is where the customer would put in their information, and then they can submit the payment. Or if they wanted to pay by company check, they can actually select the company check option. You'll see the total that they would pay, and then they can actually put in a note here, where if they put in this note, and you click I'll pay this way, this will actually send an email to the sales rep notifying that the customer intends to pay by company check. So maybe there's something that you need to send them. You know, maybe you operate under DBA, so you need to send them the information to who to send it to make the check out to. So something like that. If they want to pay by credit card, they can actually click on the credit card option, and that'll bring them to the credit card screen so that they can make payment. And you'll see here, as I'm selecting the various payment options, it's actually, if it had the discount or the surcharge in there, is actually adding that to the total, and that's the amount that'll be collected. Now, if you are just accepting the deposit, they can choose the same way. I just have mine set to the full amount. Yours doesn't have to be for the full amount. It can be for the deposit. And then there's a way to actually request payments afterwards. Net 60, this is one of those custom payment options. So this is just where it has notes where they can say, I'll pay this way. And if they put notes in there, you'll get notified, but at least you'll know essentially the way that they're paying by which option they selected on the acceptance there. So if we go back into our document here in QuoteWerks, let's go ahead and upload it or refresh it. We'll go ahead and convert this quote to an order. If the customer has already made payment or has accepted the quote but hasn't made payment yet, and you want to adjust the payment options, maybe you are no longer accepting net 60 and that's one of the payment options on there, you can actually do request payment, and you'll have the option to just resend the payment request, which would just send them, open up an email so we can say, hey, can you please make payment? Here's the payment page. Or you can actually change the payment request amount. So if I want to change the payment request, I'm going to say no. And then this will bring up the option to adjust the payment request amount. So I can say, okay, you only need to put, you know, maybe we said the full amount, but we talked it over and you're going to pay 25% now. So I'm going to change this to 25% or whatever it is. But because of that, you're not going to have the option to pay by the custom payment option, which is the net 60. So we want to change that. Maybe you're only going to be able to pay by check or credit card. You can change that as well. So it just gives you some flexibility in making those adjustments. When you do that, it'll actually re-upload that information to QuoteWerks and then give you the link to the payment page. And then if we click on the payment page here, the view payment request page, we'll see that it's been updated with now just the company check option and the Visa option. So you can choose between the two, which one you want or which one they want to pay by. You also have the option to make payment by proxy. So if you want to, maybe the customer sent you a check for the first, for the deposit, for the 30%, and you want to leave a balance there, you can actually choose how they paid. So we can say check, reference, received, deposit, and then you can put in the amount. So if you want to say like $15,000, you can hit OK. And QuoteWerks will actually update not only in QuoteWerks, but also in QuoteValet and let you know that, hey, they made $15,000 towards the document total of $32,000 and change, and there's a balance remaining of $17,939. So provides a really easy way to accept and update those payments, and you can kind of adjust. So trying to give it an easy way to be flexible with changing payment options if at the end if you need to, and then also accepting other payments. So I know that has a lot of questions. I'm going to come back to the questions at the end of the meeting. Just I want to get through some of the other features. I know the payment options is kind of like the biggest one, but we'll circle back here. But that's kind of how to use that functionality in general. For most of you, it should be pretty straightforward, where you're going to just add your payment options, probably set the defaults, and then the customer will choose between them and make payment. For those of you that maybe have a little more complex issues, where you're accepting different payment options, maybe they're paying off via 4 or 5 credit cards or whatever it is, there'll be some ways that you can kind of collect those payments, and we can kind of talk about those later. So okay, so let's go ahead and move on. We want to move on to ACH support in QuoteValet. So if you saw when I brought up the payment options, I didn't have ACH support set up in QuoteValet because I haven't set it up yet. So to do that in QuoteWerks, you're going to click on Tools, Options, and then we'll go to our tenant account and then our QuoteValet setup. And in your QuoteValet setup, there is a payment processing tab, and this is the one you're going to want to click on. So I have a credit card gateway set up. It's not actually active, it's just for example. And you would need to set up another one or the same one for if you're accepting e-checks or ACH. So to do that, you would click on the gold button, which is our new button. Select your gateway type, which in this case would be e-checks, and then select your gateway that you're using, and whichever gateway you're using, put in the required information, and then hit save. Once you do that, you'll be able to offer the ACH as a payment option in QuoteWerks through your QuoteValet documents. Now, one of the major questions is, if you have existing documents out in the world already and you add the ACH payments, basically what happens to the documents? Essentially, any documents that have been uploaded and sent to QuoteValet, we're just going to leave alone. We're not going to touch them. If you want to then add ACH as an option, you simply need to open the document and add ACH as a payment. So this is one of the things that kind of started the payments kind of rewrite and the additional functionality was that in order to take ACH, you needed to be able to add it as a payment option on the sale info tab. So moving forward, for those of you that are using QuoteValet, you're going to need to have, if you're accepting credit cards, the credit card payment option set here if you want to accept ACH, and also the ACH payment. So you'll have to have a payment option set on your sale info tab for any new documents that you create. There will be a message that pops up if you try to upload a document to QuoteValet that doesn't have a payment option. So those old documents that you've uploaded to QuoteValet, if a customer comes back to you maybe 3 months later, the quote's been expired for 6 months and they're ready to move forward. If you just update the document and you go to upload it to QuoteValet, you'll get a message stating that you don't have a payment option set. So you'll want to set a payment option. So this is only going to be required if you're accepting payments through QuoteValet. If you're not accepting payments, you don't have to worry about setting those payment options. But that's why we talked about adding those payment options first and setting those defaults. That way, every new document you create already has your payment option set, so you don't have to get that message. And we won't let you upload it to QuoteValet without a payment option if you have a deposit set and a gateway set. So if you have those two things set, you won't be able to actually upload the document to QuoteValet, because if you have the deposit set and you have a gateway set, you're trying to collect payment through QuoteValet, then you'll need to select a payment option on the document. Okay, So let's go ahead and just make a copy of this quote here. We're going to use this just for our next example. So I wanted to talk about back kind of into payment options is if you're offering leasing options. So we have all these payment options. This is essentially to pay, the full amount of the document, or possibly they're going to put the deposit down and then pay the rest, after you've completed the work or invoice them, whatever it's going to be. We also have the option to provide leasing options. So if your client, maybe they're going to pay over 12, 24, 36 months, whatever it's going to be, then you can offer those options here as well. I'm just going to clear out a couple of these just to make it a little easier to see. So the way we add lease payment options is going to be, you're going to choose add lease payment options, select your rate card that you've set up in QuoteWerks. I'm just going to go ahead and use GreatAmerica. It's my example. Select my options. Let's go ahead and add the monthly recurring to the lease payment. Get our lease payment options, select those, and add those to the document. So now I have where the customer can essentially make the full payment by ACH or check. They can also lease it from me for 12-month lease, 24-month lease, or 36-month lease. So we've had this functionality for quite a while. The new feature is going to be submitting the credit application. So all you have to do to submit the credit application, if you're using GreatAmerica, and this also worked the same way for the Ingram Micro Lease IT users. Same functionality. You won't see a difference other than the fact that it'll say Ingram Micro Lease IT here instead of GreatAmerica. But you'll be able to submit the credit application directly to your leasing provider, if it's GreatAmerica or Ingram Micro, and we'll actually submit the credit application for you, and it'll basically tell you that it's approved up to this amount. This is live, so I'm not going to do it, even though it is our test account. But basically, it's just a confirmation message popping up saying you're approved for that amount, or you're not approved for that amount, and it'll let you know. You'll also see there's an application ID. So you actually receive an application ID that is going to populate, and that will be the application ID that you essentially like your reference code with your leasing provider. For those of you that are not using GreatAmerica or Ingram Micro Lease IT, there's no credit submittal for you, but you can still use a rate card from another provider. You can drop it into QuoteWerks, and you can calculate lease payments that way as well. Okay, so wanted to let's go back to our document items here. So there's a feature in QuoteWerks that's been around for quite a bit of time, but it's a little lesser known feature, and it's under the Tools menu, and it's called Find Quoted Item. So under the Tools menu, if you click on Find Quoted Item, this will let you search for basically any type of item that exists in a specific document. So it's a great way to see kind of like a price history of how much this item's been sold previously. So we've added some additional functionality to this feature. First, made it a lot easier if you highlight an item on a quote, based on the manufacturer part number of that item, if you click on the Tools menu, you can actually see the Show Customer Product Price History. And the product price history will look at the manufacturer part number equal to the highlighted item on your document. So it'll be that item here. And then also the customer that you've set on your Sold to Ship to tab. So it's looking at those two fields. It's looking at the manufacturer part number and also the contact on the Sold to Ship to tab, and the sold to specifically. This will show you the customer that it was sold to, the doc date, the cost, the modifier you used, the quantity, the vendor it was sourced from, the document number, all this information. So it's a really great way to see and kind of stay consistent with your pricing. So if you wanted to check an item's price history before you set the price here, you can easily do that. And again, that's just going to be under the Tools menu in QuoteWerks. We also have, in addition to the product price history for a customer, just the product price history. This would be for anyone that you've sold it to, not just this specific customer. So you can see here, we're looking at the product price history based on the manufacturer part number of this particular part number, which is this one here. And it shows us all that information. And then from here, if you wanted to get this information out to Excel, or you just, maybe you need to do some type of report on it or something like that, you can actually click on the Export to Windows Clipboard. You'll get a confirmation message. And then if we open up Excel here, and let's just go ahead and paste. Let me just hit Control V. we'll actually paste that information into Excel. So if you wanted to organize it in Excel or do any type of, maybe have reports that you've already built in Excel and you want to use this information in Excel, you can. So it's a really easy way to get like basically kind of like a really simplified report on price history for a specific item from QuoteWerks directly to Excel without having to do any kind of like complicated reporting or anything like that. So it's a nice little feature. These columns are sortable, so if you click on them, we'll actually put them in alphabetical order or numerical order for you. And then we do have the ability to search, like I said, by defined quoted item in the database, where you can search based on like an item's description. So if you're looking for an item that, maybe it used to be called something else, you can say, the description contains, and then type in whatever that value would be, and then hit find, and then it'll let you search for those in the document. You can also do it for templates. So that's an easy way to update templates with items that are maybe no longer being sold, especially if you have a lot of templates. You can go through those and see where that item exists in your template and update those items as well. Okay, and last couple things I wanted to mention is some of the smaller features that we had kind of talked about in the PowerPoint presentation. The ability to copy the text from here. So before, unless you double clicked in the description window, that was really the only way to copy this text. So if you wanted to spell check it, or if you are typing it into Google for something, there wasn't an easy way to access that information other than just kind of double clicking. So now you're able to, if you click in a description field, you can just right click and do copy cell text, and that'll copy it to your clipboard. And we can then just paste it into whatever we need to see. So that's just kind of a nice little feature where you can quickly copy and text that information, or copy and paste that text into basically wherever else you need to. If you're going to use it for like a new product or something like that, that's really where you have the value, is that it's copying to the clipboard, and you can kind of use that information as necessary. Apply required items in Pay Special. So when you're using your Pay Special, so if we go to Edit, and we'll go to our Pay Special wizard here, and we'll go ahead and we'll start a new session. And for those of you that are unfamiliar with the Pay Special is what's going to allow you to copy and paste data. Typically, it's going to be for like quotes from your vendors, specifically like if they had sent something where you just wanted to see it in whatever it's going to be, something simple. But that's one of the really nice features about it, is where you're going to be able to copy and paste this data from Excel into QuoteWerks. So we're going to do, all right, we'll go ahead and we'll start a new session, and we'll click next. And then typically you copy the data from your clipboard. So let's open up our quote here. So I have a quote from a vendor. So I want to go ahead and copy this data that I need to my clipboard, and then click next. I'll see that I have data copied to my clipboard. Click next, and then I'll see my columns. And this is typically where you're going to do the mapping for this. So for instance, I know the first column is the quantity. So I can click Q, and we'll do quantity. We do have a full feature video on this functionality. So if you're interested in learning more about Pay Special, you can do that. And then the next one's going to be our vendor part number, and then our manufacturer part number, and then our description of our item, and that'll be our unit cost, unit list, and we don't need that last one. And then what we can do is, you'll see you have the option to apply the required items. So it's a new checkbox in the Pay Special window, where basically if any of these items exist in any of your product databases, QuoteWerks will automatically associate and assign the required items with them. So all you have to do is hit next, and then finish. And I know none of those are in there, and it'll copy and paste those items directly into the quote, and any required items that are associated with them as well. So it's a nice little feature to quickly copy and paste items from another vendor's quote into QuoteWerks, and then if you have any of those required items, those will be added as well. For those of you that are using QuickBooks, we talked about the new feature in QuickBooks where basically if you are accepting payments in QuickBooks, this will allow you to, let me just go ahead and open up my QuickBooks test installation here. All right. So basically, there is now a checkbox down at the bottom in the setup that'll say sync received payments to QuickBooks. And you only need to uncheck this if you are using QuickBooks Merchant Services to process orders. So Intuit Payment Services or whatever it's called. If you're using QuickBooks Merchant Services, you can uncheck this box. And what this will do is when you export your documents from QuoteWerks to QuickBooks, if there was a payment associated with it previously because it had come through QuoteValet, since QuickBooks automatically takes your payments and deposits them into your QuickBooks account, those were already reconciled and they're already in QuickBooks. Essentially, it was getting duplicated for some users. So what we've done is basically given you the option where you can uncheck this and this will no longer export that payment into QuickBooks. So you only need to uncheck this if you are using QuickBooks as your payment gateway with QuoteValet. If you're not using QuickBooks as your payment gateway for QuoteValet, don't worry about this feature. Nothing's going to change for you. You'll continue to use this functionality as is. That's why it's set by default, but we give you the option to turn it off if that's what's happening to you, where you're getting those duplicate payments between QuoteValet and QuickBooks. So just a nice little feature that's in there. That's an option. There was a way around it before that was a little cumbersome. So this is much smoother where it's basically just a checkbox and it's either exporting those or it's not, which is a nice thing to do. All right, and then the last thing I wanted to talk about before we take some of the questions is in the deliver window where we talked about if you are cloning new documents, you now have the option to specify the name for your layouts when you're cloning it. So before we used to just assign it the next file name, which would be like layout 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, whichever number you're on. So it didn't really give you a way to specify it. You'd have to clone it and then edit it and rename it and actually go into like the file to make the change. So now you can actually do that from this window. So it's just a nice little feature in making that adjustment. All right, so we are running out of time, and I know there's quite a few questions. A lot of them are about the payment options, which is what I suspected. So for those of you that don't have any questions, thank you for attending today. We got through most of the features that we wanted to cover. For those of you that did post a question, just hang tight. I'm going to start going through those and answering those. We will be posting this recording on the website, so if you did come in late or someone on your team had to leave early, for whatever reason, we'll post it on the website. You'll be able to watch the recording. It should be available here in just a few days. For those of you that did post a question, you have those questions, just hang tight. I'm going to stop the recording and we'll start going through those. So thank you all for coming, and we'll hope to talk to you soon.